Hey everyone, Sir Jellybean here, and we're back with another CallToArms GatesOfHell tutorial video. This time we're talking T34s and one of the main weaknesses that isn't really known unless you actually play them regularly, and it's the reload speed. Because even though on the charts when you look at them, they look completely amazing tanks, really, don't they? They've got good mobility, good armor, and quite a decent turret. It is the reload speed, especially for 1940 and 41 and shielded 34, which is also 1941. Now it does increase a lot better on these. The problem is though, especially on the 1940, the reload speed it's about 15 seconds. Now that might not seem that bad, 4 shells a minute, but when you go up against a Panzer IV, for instance, the reload speed is just over 7, and for the Stu, it's just under 7. So I've measured it several times with a stopwatch, and it's also the penetration rates. So T34, let's be honest, let's look at the good points. So I'm not here to batter on the tank, it is good. It has really good sloped armor, and it's strong armor, and it's very difficult to take out, and it's got very good mobility. Mobility speed's 55. If you look at that compared to an assault gun 40 or a Panzer Hell-Ostfront 42, so it's good armor, good mobility. But until its turret goes from this thing here, this kind of, I'll show you a bit closer. You see this kind of smaller turret that it has, until it upgrades to the 1942 variant, and then 43 and then 85, and obviously the T57s are a bit different. But until you get to the better turrets, it just doesn't have the reload speed or the stopping power. Now, the reload speeds are as follow, and I've measured them several times, and I've got it to the nearest second. So for the 1940, it's 15 seconds, so 4 shells a minute, which is poor. For the 1941, it's just over 10 seconds, I found, and same for the shielded, I think maybe slightly faster by a couple of milliseconds. And then once you get to the 42 and 43, you're down to 8 seconds, which is a lot better. 8 seconds is definitely fine for that type of weapon. But like I say, compared to the German, that is just over 7, and the Stu is just under 7 average, or around 7. So a lot quicker reload speed, especially when the penetration of these weapons is max as 137mm. Now if you go through the penetration of these Russian T34s, the first one, the 1940, is only 69mm, so it's very poor. Bit better on the 1941, it's 78mm. The shielded is the same as the 42, it's 85mm, so it's got the more upgraded weapon. It's the 41.5, I believe, but it must have some better components in because it does shoot. I've tested the penetration. And then the 1943 is the same as the 42, but the 85 is 125mm. And the T34 57s are different, they're 123mm, but obviously we know they've got the 57mm high velocity gun. They're more of a tank hunter variant. Only 10 were made in real life, I believe. There weren't many, but it is a bit of an outcast tank because as well you're trading off high explosive damage in the high explosive shells because it's a smaller caliber turret. So yeah, you can go down this line if you want some better armor penetration, but I wouldn't advise it. It loses a bit more of its multi-role function. Also, another drawback to the T34, which kind of weighs on its thing, the early models don't have the same types of ammunition the German ones have. I mean, the diversity of it. So you have your armor piercing rounds and high explosive rounds. You have a lot more high explosive than armor piercing, and that carries on all the way down, basically until you get to the 1943 model. So you get composite rigid and high explosive anti-tank. But the German tanks, even from the early Stug and the Panzer, have armor piercing, composite rigid, and high explosive anti-tank, and they have a better balance of shells, which is another big issue in my opinion because your 1940 is not going to be able to deal with heavy tanks, whereas the Stug and even the Hell-Ostfront, when you do come up against heavy Russian tanks, those high explosive anti-tank rounds or composite rigid give you that extra punch, and they give you a bit of versatility. So yeah, it's not saying the T34 is a bad tank. It's just saying be wary, especially new players playing as the Russians. You hear about the legendary T34. You pick the 1940, you fire the gun, and then you're waiting, and you're waiting. And the Germans will be firing up 2 shots to your 1. And here's another thing. Imagine in this situation, right, especially with the AI, you've got high explosive going up to a point, let's say we're attacking this point over here, so you're rolling forward, then all of a sudden a tank pops up, and you switch ammunition. It's going to be 15 seconds to switch your ammo, right? But if you're in the Stu, for instance, let's say you get high explosive in, you're rolling up to the point, the tanks come in, and you switch ammunition. Bang. 7 seconds. Half the time. It's crazy. So yeah, just some little tips and some things I noticed that it doesn't really get talked about as much. Obviously, once you've got down the T34 line, T34 85, reload speeds, I think it's about 8 seconds, but because if it's high caliber gun, you'd expect it to be a bit slower, bigger shell, but it doesn't matter as much because this thing obviously packs a bigger wallop, and it does have that bigger turret. And the main reason it was slow in real life was because there wasn't enough room in the turret for the loader, commander, and gunner. And so basically, too much to do for such a small crew. If you look, all these are 4-man crews. Well, even the Stug's a 4-man crew, but the Panzer is a 5-man. So just to highlight one of the flaws, but I think yeah, basically if you do go down the T34 line, try as quickly as you can get to the 1942 variant, and you'll see massive improvement on reload speed. And obviously the 1943 I think is where it really comes into its own. And in real life this was true as well. Like the early variants had really bad sights, really bad. The turret layout was poor, but once they got further in and started putting some more resource into it, far better and far improved. Anyway, I hope that's been useful to you guys and a bit of content for the Russians because we're normally doing things for the Germans. Obviously, if you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next one.